All right, good evening. I'm going to be recording a webinar based on commercial property coverage. I have everyone muted here. So this is going to be a pretty condensed program just about commercial property coverage. I'll be doing little webinars just to cover each section of the commercial package program, starting with the property coverage. And we'll get into it. Let's see. For those of you that want to access my online sample test questions, go to lgdstudy.com. Click on the Fire and Casualty Exam Prep, and there's a PayPal link. You'll have access to online sample test questions, playbook, there's a couple of charts, and of course I always email tips on how to study and how to pass. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me also. When you go to lgdstudy.com, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a contact us. Just reach out and pitch out any questions that you have that I can help clear up, all right? Even if you're not registered, if you do have a couple quick questions, not a problem, all right? So let's go ahead and get started. As part of a commercial package policy, we're going to talk about conditions. Every policy section has conditions, right? In a commercial package policy, you also have modules or coverage parts. A lot of times in your online study, you'll see it as coverage parts, but when you go take the test, it'll break it down into modules. So if you only bought one, that's a monoline policy. If you bought two or more, that's a package, or sometimes called a modular policy on your exam. So modules or modular. So watch out for that terminology. And in some cases, we do have endorsements. Remember, endorsements are additional charge for additional features and benefits on your policy. Kind of like getting an options packet on a new car. You know, you get the new car. Did you want the window tint? Did you want the air conditioning? Additional charge to add that on. And that's kind of what an endorsement is. You don't run out and buy an endorsement by itself. You got to buy a policy, and in the endorsement, you pay to enhance some of the benefits on the policy. Okay, so let's continue. The common policy conditions are found in all of the commercial package modules or package parts. Okay. Cancellation. What this means is the first named insured can cancel the policy at any time, typically in writing. The company typically can only cancel you out if it's material misrepresentation, fraud, or non-payment of premium. Right. But even though you have like a named insured, like Bill and Bob own a business, right? Bill is the first one named, because I said Bill and Bob own a business. And so if they're named on the policy like that, Bill is the first named insured, and Bill is the one that can cancel the policy. So even though Bob calls in, as an insurance company, we're going to listen to the first named insured and keep that in mind when you take your exam. As far as requesting changes to the policy, same thing. The first named insured may request changes to the policy. The reason is if Bill and Bob get into a skirmish and, you know, they both call up and want to make changes, we don't want to get into their drama. We basically listen to the first named insured. Okay? So even on the personal lines business, I mean, usually we trust, you know, husband and wife, but we still want to kind of play it safe and just say, hey, by the way, if Bill's late or if I have some information I need to provide you about this policy, which one of you should I contact? And so when they tell you, oh, he or she makes the decisions, then you want to list them first on the policy. And you can even let them know, hey, reason I'm listing them first on the policy, so if my staff do contact you, you know, we know which one to reach out to, okay? Never assume who's going to be listed first. Always ask, all right? As far as examining your books and records, the insurance company can examine your company's books and records during the policy period and for up to 3 years after coverage ends. Statute of limitations typically ends in 3 years, and it may take a while for them to investigate the claim. In some of the policies, it may take a while to even realize there was a loss, and then they begin their investigation. Okay, so that's what the examine your books and records condition is about. Inspections and surveys. Anytime you see this, it deals with underwriting. Okay? We're going to inspect the business, maybe do surveys of the business to determine if it's a risk that we want to accept. So anytime you see inspections and surveys, that's dealing with insurability and underwriting. As far as the premiums are concerned, keep in mind, first named insured is responsible for paying the premium. That means if the first named insured cancels, the first named insured is entitled to the premium refund. So again, even though there could be a couple people in a business, the first name insured is the one that controls the policy. Keep that in mind. The last condition out of the 6 is transfer of rights. So let's say you own a business and you sell the business, and rather than the person purchasing the business, Rather than them running out and buying a whole new policy since you already have coverage, why not transfer the coverage that you have on your business to the person who purchased the business? This is called an assignment. We're transferring the ownership of the policy from one party to another. Not a problem, except you got to have insurance companies written permission to do that. So you've been running this business for several years. The person that bought the business from you, this is the first business they've ever run. So to an insurance company, based on loss history, they're probably going to suffer some more losses. And so we can still keep the same policy with the same coverages, but we may adjust the premium to reflect the increase or even decrease in risk sometimes. Right? But yeah, you transferring the ownership of the policy is called an assignment, and you got to have insurance companies written permission. All right? The modules are coverage parts that you need to familiarize yourself with. Remember, today we're just going to cover the property section, but there's liability, crime, inland marine, boiler machinery, auto, and of course farm, which is its own separate category. All right. All of these, there's really no overlaps or gaps in coverage. It's kind of tricky because you have a property policy, commercial property policy, and you get a test question that says which cause of loss form provides coverage for theft. In a commercial policy, none of them do. All right. If you have the property policy, because a crime is a separate module. So if you didn't have the crime coverage, well, then you wouldn't have any theft coverage at all in the policy. So property covers property. Liability covers liability associated with the building, right? A location like a slip and fall, but can also include, they bought a product, they took it home, a couple of years later, it malfunctioned and injured their child. Okay, that loss occurred away from the location of the business, and that's part of the liability because they got injured with your product. Crime, of course, covers theft. Inland marine covers, more your expensive items. Right? Mobile equipment, which mobile equipment you just want to know is non-street legal vehicles like a forklift or a bulldozer or a Zamboni, that machine that cleans that top sheet of ice on the ice rink. You typically don't drive a Zamboni down a freeway in most areas of the U.S. here. So that's inland marine coverage because it's not meant to be registered, licensed, and driven on the roadway. Okay, just like a car or truck. And we'll talk more about that in the next module. Boiler machinery, think of you have a home warranty for your house. Well, boiler machinery, which is sometimes called equipment breakdown coverage, is kind of the same thing, but for a business. Most of your premiums go towards inspection to prevent loss. Right? Commercial auto covers vehicles used in the course of the business. And of course, farm is a blend of residential and commercial on one policy. Because not only do you live there on a farm, you also work there. So it's kind of a blend, right? So now we're going to go into the commercial property coverage, which is what tonight's webinar is all about. There's 4 causal loss forms in this program. You have basic, broad, special, and earthquake. Now, normally you only have the 3, basic, broad, and special. But for commercial property, earthquake can be purchased as a causal loss form. Now, you can't buy it by itself. You have to add it to one of the other causal loss forms. Okay, so let's say you bought broad, and then you added the earthquake causal loss form. So on a commercial property policy, you may actually have 2 causal loss forms, like broad and earthquake or special and earthquake. All right, but you can't get earthquake by itself, not as a causal loss form. All right. Valuation. Anytime you see valuation or valuation clause, that just means if you suffer loss, how will the company pay on the loss, pay on the claim? And for commercial property, it's actual cash value on everything. So actual cash value on the building, actual cash value on the business personal property, and actual cash value on other people's property, which we'll get into, kind of like Bailey's coverage. Right? But for commercial property coverage, it's actual cash value on everything. Now, typically your homeowners and dwelling outside the basic form, it covers a replacement cost on the building and actual cash value on the contents. But remember, commercial property, actual cash value on everything. There are 13 different coverage forms. We probably won't go through all of them because it's not really needed. But we will discuss how they interact with each other and how you might want to add those on. Okay? So let's talk about those causal loss forms. The first one is basic. Now, this is very different from the personal lines because if you had a dwelling policy, a basic form, your dwelling policy basic form only covered fire, lightning, and internal explosion. But for commercial property, the basic form covers fire, lightning, You have your extended coverage perils. Now remember, extended coverage is a package of 7 additional perils that are normally added on to a dwelling policy, at least a DP1. But for commercial, it's actually built into the basic form. So the 7 coverages, just think of WARVs, WHARVES, WARVs, windstorm, hail, aircraft, riots, vehicle, explosion, and smoke. All right. So those are a package of 7 additional perils that are included in the commercial property basic form. Vandalism, sprinkler leakage, sinkhole collapse, and volcanic action is also included in the basic form. Now, when I say volcanic action, that's like a volcano erupts and dumps a bunch of ash on your house, okay, or your property, in this case, commercial property. And so that would be like debris removal. That's what's covered. The actual ground rumbling, that's not going to be covered. That's volcanic activity. So be aware of that. There's a difference between the action from a volcano that causes a loss, like ash dropping on your building, okay, versus eruption, which disrupts the ground, and that's not covered here. Okay. Now, a broad form covers everything the basic form covers. Plus, we have glass coverage. Excuse me, we have glass coverage. Now, glass is typically not covered on the basic form except for fire loss. But if other perils occur, even the broad and special give you $100 a window with a $500 per occurrence match. So now going back to this building right here, this picture of this building, if you had the commercial property broad form, this owner of this building would get $100 a window with a $500 per occurrence maximum for all those windows on that building. $500 to replace every window in that building, definitely not enough. Okay, and so we'll talk about one of the coverage forms is glass coverage. Okay. So your broad form covers also falling objects, weight of ice, sleet, or snow, which could cause your building to collapse, right? And accidental discharge of water. In order for losses to be covered, typically the loss must be sudden and accidental. There has to be a specific date and time to the loss in order for it to be covered. So, a slow drip within the walls, which caused a mold or mildew, whatever, that's not going to be covered because that was like wear and tear over a period of time. All right, so it's got to be a ruptured pipe, and you can put a specific date and time to when that loss occurred. All right, collapse is also covered on the broad form, not covered on the basic form. And so every once in a while, you do get these comparison contrast questions on your test, and know what the broad form covers on top of what the basic form covers. Okay. Now, in the special form, it's an all risk or open peril form. And anytime you see special, always pay attention to exclusions. So the exclusions are the main ones: earthquake, flood, nuclear risk, war, wear and tear, intentional acts. Those are not covered by insurance. Okay. Wear and tear is never covered by insurance. And intentional acts, that's you damage your own property. We're not going to cover that either. Okay. So now, the other cause of loss form you can get is earthquake. Now, you can add earthquake. It's either as a cause of loss form, it could be added as an endorsement, or it could be purchased as a separate policy. Okay, so, sorry about that. It could be purchased as a separate policy. So for commercials, commercial coverage, there's 3 ways of buying earthquake. Okay, so keep that in mind on your exam also. Now, another thing about earthquake, if an earthquake strikes, the next 168 hours counts as one occurrence. That means that when an earthquake hits and then you have all the aftershocks, that anything that happens within that first week, that's 1 week, counts as one occurrence, so one deductible to apply. Okay. All right, let's go into the coverage forms. Property is coverage A, the building. Okay, this is the main building. Anything bolted, welded, nailed, attached to your structure, that would be coverage A. And most insurance companies require at least 80% co-insurance. That means you have to purchase at least 80% of coverage to the value of the building. They encourage you to get 80% co-insurance because if you do have 80% of coverage to the value of the building, you get 5 extensions for free. Okay? So that's the difference between endorsement and extension. Endorsements are additional charge. Extensions are free as long as you have 80% of coverage to the value of the property. Right? And so 5 extensions of coverage on newly acquired or constructed property. We'll give you $250,000 for that newly acquired or constructed property. So, maybe you bought a new building or you finished building a building and you haven't transitioned to the property policy. While you're transitioning from the builder's risk to the commercial property coverage, we'll give you $250,000 of coverage for that building. We'll also give you $100,000 for business personal property in that new building that you bought or the new building that was completed. Okay. Property off premises. Now, your commercial property only covers your business personal property and inventory when it's in and around the building within 100 feet of the premises. So if you're taking some of your inventory away from the location of the business, all right, maybe to display it somewhere at some shops and try and sell some more, actually, your normal commercial property policy won't cover it once you leave the premises. That means in and around the building within 100 feet of the building. And so one of the extensions is we'll give you $10,000 worth of coverage for some of that property that's off premises. Okay. If you have an outdoor sign, we'll give you $2,500 worth of coverage for it. That may not be enough, but at least it's something. And valuable papers and records coverage. We cover a little bit. There's no real dollar amount. It depends on each company. If you do have a lot of valuable papers and records, such as manuscripts, maps, drawings, and mortgages, then you're going to want to look at getting inland marine coverage. Okay, so it's kind of like jewelry coverage on your personal property. You have increased limits. Inland marine is kind of the same thing for a business. You have some valuable items and you need some increased limits of coverage, and you want better coverage. That's what that's about. So coverage A covers the building. Coverage B covers the stuff in the building. Okay, that would be your contents. Right? So that would be your desk, your chairs, your conference room, your computer. Okay? But not the information you had on the computer. That's actually another type of inland marine coverage called EDP, electronic data processing coverage. Okay. But yeah, I mean, if you flip your commercial building upside down, anything that falls, that would be coverage B, business personal property. Oh, by the way, coverage B, business personal property, includes leased property like a copy machine or maybe a postage meter that you leased. That's actually covered there, okay? And one more hiccup I got to pitch out there. Outdoor furniture is covered under building coverage, okay? So what that means is if you have a couple park benches in and around the building, okay, that would be covered under the building because it's mounted to the floor, bolted, welded, mounted to the floor. And if it's within 100 feet of the building, if you flip the building upside down, they're going to stick, okay? Now, the little furniture, the little plastic furniture, tables and chairs that the little deli on the side of the building pulls out every day where people can sit and eat outside, and then they bring them in, every evening, that would be coverage B, business personal property. Okay, but remember, outdoor furniture that's, the park benches that are bolted to the sidewalk, that's going to be coverage A. All right. Coverage C will be personal property of others. A couple things you can keep in mind. Number one, a veterinary hospital, where people leave their pets overnight for treatment and care, and something happens. We're going to replace their pets on an actual cash value basis. Kind of like Bailey's coverage if it's a dry cleaner. Where people leave their clothes, maybe for a couple of days, and then maybe the dry cleaner burns down with their clothes in it. We're going to give them actual cash value for their clothes. All right. Remember, commercial property coverage is actual cash value on everything. The building, your business personal property, and other people's property under your care. All right. Co-insurance. Remember, companies want you to carry at least 80% of coverage to the value of the property. This is common on the test. In the real world, it's between 70 to 90%. Each company is slightly different. Right? But for the test, they typically will use 80%. Again, it's to encourage you to carry reasonable amounts of coverage so you get those 5 extensions for free. And if you don't insure at 80%, well, then there's a penalty. You typically have to pay more of a claim. So the co-insurance equation you need to know is the amount of insurance you did have divided by the amount of insurance you should have had. Now that should number needs to be 80% of the value of the building, okay? Don't put the value of the building as what you should carry because the company says you only need 80%, okay? So did have is what you bought, should have is 80% of the value of the building. You take that fraction, you multiply it by whatever the loss is, that's going to tell you how much the company will pay on the claim, minus the deductible. Now, the test will probably give you a deductible, or it might just say disregard any deductible. All right. Now, if they ever say standard deductible, that's $250. On all of our property policies, the standard deductible is $250. There is one exception, a business owner policy. With a business owner policy, the standard deductible, as you can see here, is $500. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right. So I put an example here. We have a building valued at $500,000. It's insured for $300,000. The insurance company requires 80% co-insurance. There's a $120,000 loss. So assuming there's a $1,000 deductible, how much will the policy pay? And so just plug in the numbers. What you did have is $300,000. What you should have had is $400,000, which is 80% of the value of the building, because it says there's an 80% co-insurance. So if you put, the bottom of the should is 500, you'll come up with the wrong number. Okay, it doesn't seem to add up. Okay? So you take 300 divided by 400 times the loss of 120,000. Right? That's how much. It's going to tell you how much the company will pay on the claim minus the deductible. Okay. And so again, 300 divided by 400, that simplifies to 3/4. 3/4 times the loss equals 90,000 minus the $1,000 deductible. And so the answer is 89,000. That means on a $120,000 loss, this client has to pay 31,000. Okay, because they didn't have enough insurance. So imagine if they actually bought the right amount of coverage. So the building is valued at $500,000 and it's insured for 400,000. The insurance company requires 80% co-insurance. There's a $120,000 loss. Assuming there is a $1,000 deductible, how much will the policy pay? So now, again, we want to plug in the numbers. The amount of insurance you did have is 400,000, because that's what it says you insured it for. You should have had 400,000, which is 80% of the 500. Okay, you take that times the loss, right? That's how much your policy will pay on a claim minus any deductible. And so this is what happens if you actually had adequate coverage. So you did have 400, you should have had 400. So it simplifies to 1. 1 times the loss equals the loss, which is 120,000. Minus the deductible, the insurance company pays 119,000. So the client only has to pay $1,000 their deductible towards that loss because they purchased adequate insurance coverage. Okay. So as much as you want to cut your expenses and get lower coverage, I wouldn't recommend it. Get the adequate amounts. So that way all you have to do is pay a deductible, because if you underinsure, there's a co-insurance penalty. It's deductible plus the penalty for not having enough insurance. All right. Some other items to keep in mind: the named insured is anyone named on the policy. The first named insured is the one that makes the decisions on the policy. Kind of covered this earlier in the broadcast here. And an insured is anyone who's covered by the policy, although not named. Right? So like your customer is under liability. If one of your customers gets injured, they're in a sense insured by the policy, even though they're not named on the policy. Right? When you get into insurance contracts, watch the definitions. They'll use a lot of contract law definitions. And they'll even ask you things like, in an insurance contract, who is we or us referring to? And we or us is the insurance company. So we or us, the insurance company, are going to cover you and your stuff in the event of a loss. Now, this is for a property policy. Right? So keep that in mind here. We're not talking liability here. We're not talking health insurance or workers' comp. It's just the business owner's belongings in the building, or I should say the company's belongings. Okay. So now this is kind of tricky, because in a company, if you're insuring a business, the name insured is actually the name of the company. But the first name insured is the CEO or CFO or someone who's designated to make decisions on behalf of the policy that's protecting that company. Right? So it gets a little bit tricky. We're not going to insure the first name insured. This is personal property. It's the named insured, which is the company's business personal property. Right? Vacancy. Whenever you think of vacancy in a commercial building, you got to look at two different angles. Number one, the owner of the building, or number two, someone leasing space in the building. So as an owner of the building, if you had a commercial property policy, we, the insurance company, would consider the building vacant if 70% of the building is vacant or unoccupied, which another way of saying that is less than 31% is in use. So 70% vacant is the same as less than 31% is being used. Two ways of saying the same thing, right? So be wary of that. A lot of your online studies will say 70% is vacant, 70% is vacant. Then you take the test and it says less than 31% is in use, and you're still looking for 70%, you see. So I'm trying to give you that other side of the coin that the insurance exams do on you. They flip the coin over and give you the other side, so be wary of that. Now that's if you own the building. So if you're leasing space in the building as a tenant, well, there's a different definition for vacancy for you, right? And the definition is you don't have enough business personal property to run your business. So let's say in a 10-story building, for an owner, 7 stories are empty. That means only 3 stories are being used. So as an insurance company, we would consider that property vacant, all right? Now, as a tenant, you're leasing one of those 3 stories, right, that's still being used, right? And let's say you own this, you're leasing this 4,000 square foot space, and all you have is one multifunction fax copier scanner in the corner, and you're running a print shop business. Well, having one multifunction fax copier scanner in the corner of the building, your office space, is not enough business personal property to run a printing operation. And so to an insurance company underwriter, we would consider the property vacant. Okay, now remember, that's a tenant. You're leasing space. Okay, you got to get the two different. Just by changing one word in the question changes the answer. All right. Now, if the property, in either case, if the property has been vacant for 60 consecutive days, we're not going to cover these first 5 perils in this first bullet here. Vandalism, glass breakage, sprinkler leakage, theft, attempted theft, water damage, right? We're not going to cover those 5 perils. They're excluded after 60 consecutive days of being vacant. Because again, if no one's watching the property for 2 months, it kind of becomes a target for vandalism. All right? So now, those 5 perils will be excluded during a period of vacancy. Everything else will still be covered minus 15%. So if there's a property or fire loss after 60 days, we'll still pay minus 15%, kind of a penalty for leaving the property vacant. So before any of that should happen, hopefully on your policy, it includes the vacancy permit endorsement. And so if this is on your contract, if your program or your building did go vacant, or as a tenant you met the definition of vacant after 60 days, the vacancy permit endorsement will actually still provide coverage for those 5 perils: vandalism, glass breakage, sprinkler leakage, water damage, theft, or attempted theft. They're actually still going to be covered after 60 days of being vacant. Okay, it's only if you have that vacancy permit endorsement. So it doesn't cover during the policy period. It only covers those specific or specified perils during the permit period, because the property's got to be vacant for 60 days for this to kick in. So if you pick policy period, you're going to get that wrong. Right? It covers specified perils during the permit period. Right? Value reporting form. So if you have a clothing store, you have fluctuating inventory, or maybe a toy store, right? And that means you're going to have fluctuating inventory, especially on the holidays. You have high inventory. Maybe January, people recovering from Christmas sale, maybe tax time, low inventory because people recovering from paying taxes. And so your inventory fluctuates throughout the year. So the value reporting form, you need to report how much inventory you have to your insurance company. Now, the reporting periods can be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, and they need to be reported in a timely fashion. So if they're not reported within 30 days of the loss occurs, well, the penalty is we're only going to pay 75% of the claim. Right? So make sure you're timely in your reports. And so someone who has a new car dealership, that would actually be daily reporting. Because if you own a car dealership, every morning when you walk on a lot, you know how many cars are there ready to be sold. Mid-morning, you know how many cars were dropped off to add to your inventory. And then at the end of the night, you know how many cars were sold that day, so you can subtract from your inventory. So that would be a form of daily reporting. Okay. Huge retail stores, they probably do monthly. Some of them do annually. Right? So they record their inventory, annually. So builder's risk. That's another avenue where we do value reporting, where you're hiring someone to build a building. And the contractor actually has to report the value of the building while it's being built. So if a building burns down during the course of construction, the insurance companies know exactly what to pay towards that loss. Right? And so value reporting forms are used for inventory, right? Then again, for building a building. Now, for retail sales, there's one other thing you need to keep in mind. Peak season endorsement, the last bullet on the page here. Okay. We know toy stores and retail stores always beef up their inventory during certain seasons, back to school, holidays. And so by getting a peak season endorsement, it automatically raises up your inventory coverage by 20%. Okay. So it's something you really want just in case you have fluctuating inventory throughout the year and you know your trends. Okay. So business income coverage. So now you have a business, and because of a covered peril, you have to shut down. Right? Well, there's a 3-day wait or a 72-hour deductible, and then we're going to pay you missing business income. This is income that you would normally earn if you were open for business. So if a restaurant burns down, and it's going to take a couple months for them to rebuild it, okay, well, after 3 days, we're going to pay business income. Now, there's a formula here. You do need to know it. And it's net income before income taxes. Or I just got some feedback from someone who took the test. Sometimes it's net profit or loss before income taxes. And keep in mind the expenses includes payroll. See, if you're a restaurant and you burnt down, and it's going to take a couple of months for you to get back up and running again, you still need to pay your employees so that when you open up, they're going to be there for you. Because if you don't pay your payroll during a shutdown, your employees are going to disappear. They're going to go find a job somewhere else because they got to feed families. And so when you open your restaurant back up, you don't even have a crew. And so it'd be good to take care of your employees during that shutdown period. Right? And also it builds, camaraderie. And man, they'll love you. So be ready for that. Another thing that's really cool about business income coverage is a lot of times it will actually continuously pay you business income for up to 30 days after you're back in business. So if a restaurant shuts down and you have this grand opening, we'll still pay you for up to 30 days after you're up and running, because it may still take a while for your regulars to realize you've opened up again and start coming back, okay? So a lot of contracts do have that built in. The number of days may vary depending on the company. For the exam, typically up to 30 days while you're back in operation. And business income is an indirect loss coverage. See, the fire is a direct loss, direct physical loss, damage, destruction of your property. And because of that fire and you're shut down, now we have this additional loss of paying you missing business revenue until your business is back open again. Okay, so it's an indirect loss type of coverage. Another indirect loss coverage is extra expense coverage. Now, the difference between this and business income is this pays immediately right at the time of the loss. Right? Gives you money right away to get a location, get some machinery, equipment, and get up and running as soon as possible after a loss. Right? So let's say you have a daily newspaper that you print up for local residents, and it's a daily newspaper. So lo and behold, your factory burns down, your newspaper print shop burns down. Well, with a daily newspaper, you need to get newspapers out on the street that next day. And so extra expense can provide funds immediately to get a location, get equipment, print your newspapers, and get them out on the street right away. Okay? Because the sooner we get you up and running, the less we're going to spend in claims. All right? Now, if we can't get you up and running right away, well, then you can add the business income coverage. So just in case your business isn't, like I said, up and running right away, it may take longer, then you're losing income and you want the business income coverage. So you can buy business income by itself, you can buy extra expense coverage by itself, or you can buy them both together. Okay, it depends on the type of business that you have, to be honest with you. All right? But remember, these are both indirect or sometimes called consequential loss coverage. Right? That's the third bullet: indirect or consequential loss coverage. Right? Business income from dependent properties. This is kind of an unusual thing. People don't realize you can actually insure other companies that you are dependent upon for a livelihood and financial support. How's that? And so we have 3 companies. We have a contributing location. Let's say they manufacture raw materials, and they sell it to company B, the manufacturing location. It takes those raw materials and manufactures them into a computer chip. And then they're going to sell them to company C, the recipient location. It buys that computer chip, puts it in a computer, and then sells it off to the public. Okay. So now, if you were company B, you rely on company A to provide you those raw materials so you can manufacture your chip to sell to company C. So if company A suffered a loss, there's no raw materials for you to manufacture your chip, so there's nothing to sell to company C. You're going to lose some you're going to lose some income. Right? Likewise, if you're company B, right, still, you rely on company C to buy that chip from you to put in their computer electronic devices and sell it to the public. So if company C has a loss and they're shut down due to a covered peril like a fire, well, they're not around to buy that chip from you. And so you're manufacturing, stockpiling all those chips, but you can't make income because company C is not there to buy them. And so this is like a partnership. So why not insure these other companies that you're dependent upon for continuous financial support? So you're going to insure company A, and you're going to insure company C. So if one of those two other companies suffers a loss, the insurance company provides you with money to tie you over till they get back online, or maybe find other companies to provide raw materials or other companies to buy the chip from you. Okay. You got to have an agreement. I mean, to be honest with you, this happens at strip malls. You know, if you go to actually I shouldn't say strip mall, a major mall, and there's one anchor store, right? I'm going to throw a name out there, Macy's. That's what we have out here. It's like an anchor store. Most people, if they go to a big mall, they're going to go to Macy's. And so if you had a store, you want to be positioned right next to Macy's. So the foot traffic going in and out of Macy's, they're going to pop their head in your store, and it helps your sales because people may see some interesting stuff and buy it. But it gives you more foot traffic. So if Macy's has a fire and they shut down, there's no foot traffic to your store. So you could actually lose some income because of that fire that Macy's had. So why not insure Macy's? So if they suffer loss, well, the insurance company gives you money to tie you over until Macy's gets rebuilt, reopened, and the foot traffic comes back. And it's not just your store buying a policy on Macy's. It's actually that mall, okay, because they want that anchor store to be around. And if a loss occurs, they all take a hit, okay? So this does actually happen. Right. So most people don't think of this. It's more like maybe like a business partnership where they have two partners insure each other. And this is actually what it is. Now, in insuring these other locations, they have to be totally, separately, wholly owned other companies. You can't do this to your own company, like your own subsidiary or a division of your own company. These other companies have to be totally, separately owned companies. Okay. All right. Condominium association. Now, there's actually two types of coverage. We do have the association coverage, and think of that covers the exterior grounds. You know, the structures, the stairways, the hallways, common areas, maybe the clubhouse and the pool. That's what that one's going to cover. And then we have unit owners coverage, which actually covers the interior units. That means if your condo association had both of these coverages, you just need a renter's policy, which is an HO4, because the association covers the outside grounds and your kitchen cabinets and bathtub. So an HO4 would be fine for you. But eventually you're going to go to those association meetings and you're going to vote to have your association dues reduced. And that's when they're going to take out the unit owners coverage. And they're only going to keep the association coverage, which covers those exterior grounds. That's when you change your HO4 to an HO6 if you own a condo. Because now you are responsible for the kitchen cabinets, the fixtures, and the bathtub. Okay. So again, if the association has both exterior and interior coverage, you just need an HO4. But if it only has the association coverage, then you got to get an HO6. Okay. Because you own those kitchen cabinets as a condo owner. A lot of times when it's a brand new condo, they have both. I mean, not brand new to you, but brand new built condo. They usually have exterior and interior coverage. Older condos probably just have the association. Okay. Builder's risk. This covers a building that's being built. All right. And again, sometimes it is called course of construction coverage. It's only going to cover all the materials that are being installed in the building, the cement, the girders, the beams, the nails, the air conditioning units that are being installed. It does not cover the builder's tools. Right? Because the builder's tools are covered by the contractor's equipment coverage, which is actually a type of inland marine coverage. Right? Since it is property coverage, we only cover the building, and we even include theft of a building or part of a building, believe it or not. Right? Yeah, so they're putting up like 3 stories, and then they take off, and the security guard fell asleep, and someone took all the copper plumbing and piping out of the building. So there is some theft coverage, but there's no liability because no one should really be on the property outside of the workers, and the workers are covered under workers' compensation. All right. Now, even though when a building is complete, the insurance companies say you know as long as you get 80% of coverage of the value of the property, we're good. But for builder's risk, we never use 80%. The ultimate value on a builder's risk policy is 100% of the value when the building is completed. So remember, this is that builder's risk where we talked about a value reporting form where the contractor reports the value of the building while it's being built. So if there's a loss during the middle of a construction, we know exactly what to pay. But the ultimate value is 100% of the building when it's complete. Okay, so we don't co-insure builder's risk coverage. All right. Glass coverage form. Again, this is one of those other coverage forms you can add to your property policy because the broad and special give you $100 a window with a $500 per occurrence max, which isn't a whole lot. And so by adding glass coverage to this program, to your property, we're going to cover all the windows on an all risk basis. Okay? This actually has some detail to it because only windows that are lettered and numbered to show its exact position on the building and it's itemized on the information page of the deck sheet would be covered. That means newly acquired glass is typically not covered unless it's added to the information page of the deck sheet. That means if you go downtown and see that big skyscraper and try and count all the windows on it, know that every window is actually lettered and numbered and it's listed on the information page of the deck sheet. Okay, so if a loss occurs, we know which windows are covered. How's that? Now, glass building blocks, which actually are weight support, they support weight, I should say, that's actually covered by your property policy. Think of this as more covering the windows. Okay, plate glass coverage. And again, it gives you better coverage than $100 a window if you didn't have it. Okay? Fire loss is not covered under glass coverage form because that's actually covered by the property policy. Okay? Leasehold interest coverage. That's a good SIO. All right. So let's say you had a loss and you can't go back to your original location. You have to break that lease and go somewhere else because there's no way you can financially stay alive. For whatever reason, I don't know, maybe there's a chemical spill where you can't move into that area again, okay? And so you find another location. Now the problem is, let's say the rents went up, and so you're paying $2,000 a month for some space, and because of a fire, you can't go back to that space. You need to find another location, but now it costs $3,000 to lease a similar size space. Well, your insurance is only going to pay the $2,000 that you're paying because that was to indemnify it. So if it costs $3,000 to get an equivalent space, you're going to come up short even after a loss. So leasehold interest coverage, it can cover the increased rents because of a relocation after a loss. Okay, and there's a set time. You'd have to read the contract, but just get the concept down. Also, because in some cases you may have to break a lease to relocate for whatever reason. As long as it's a covered peril, we can help cover that. Okay, so a lot of people don't realize this. Over here in the San Francisco area during the .com boom, you know, you moved into a place and then the boom hit and then you had to relocate and you couldn't because rents like doubled overnight. And so some companies had to move out of the area because of that, because they had some losses. Okay. Mortgage holders, errors and omissions. This basically covers the property that's held in the trust during like an escrow. In case a loss occurs, it's not really the seller's issue, it's not really the buyer's issue because it's an escrow, it's the mortgage holder's issue. And so they need this coverage to help protect that property while they're managing it in this transforming or transition of buyer to seller. Okay. There is some liability associated with it, but it's more just protecting the property. Okay. Keep it simple. The standard property policy. Now, if you wanted a skeletal commercial property policy on a building, like an old dilapidated warehouse, although this picture looks pretty good, this would be like the cheapest rinky-dink policy you can get on probably an empty warehouse, maybe even vacant warehouse that you just wait for the property values to rise to sell. Not a lot. Think of a basic form, very limited. It's not very flexible, and I mean, talk about scale back. This is one of those programs where you want your clients to sign their life away. There really isn't a lot of coverage on this. But again, you have those people out there that just wanted the minimum coverage, the minimum limits of insurance on a building. This is probably going to be it. Okay, it's one of those things where when you really get out there selling, you don't even want to push it. Even though the clients are requesting it, you might want to say, hey, just go somewhere else. Yeah, you got to learn to say no sometimes. So this was my commercial property webinar. That's all it is. I'm going to have a couple other webinars coming out for liability, eliminating all the other coverage parts. So eventually, over a short period of time, hopefully, you'll have about 7 different webinars here with each coverage part included. So again, if you want to register for my study, go to lgdstudy.com. Click on the Fire and Casualty Exam Prep PayPal link. It's set for $50. You'll have access to all my online sample test questions to help you study for your exam. The playbook. Let me explain the playbook. If you were to make flashcards, this would be it. So when you see this heading in each section, these are what you want to look for. So you put the heading on one side of a flashcard and put the information right next to it on the other side, and you have your own flashcard. So there's some charts, which are in my other webinars that you have access to. And if you do register, I do give you some tips to pass to help you out. I teach a different way. I recommend you study a different way. If you want to pass this test, do not test yourself. A lot of people want to test themselves, and I recommend don't do it, because if you test yourself, you read the question, read the answers, you think about it, you pick an answer, and when you pick that answer, you just imprint it in your head. That's the answer that goes with that question. Right? And then you finish the test and you grade it, and you've got that question wrong. The problem is the next time you see that question, you typically will pick that same wrong answer, because in your mind, it was right. And you will fight tooth and nail that you are right, even though you're wrong. Okay? So don't fill your head with the wrong answers. That's why when you register for my online material, my sample test questions, the answer's already highlighted. When you see this question, this is the answer you want to look for. The verbiage of the questions may change, because this test goes crazy with a thesaurus, but the concepts are what you need to know, and those don't change. Okay? And so, yeah, if you register, reach out. If you have questions, reach out to me. You can go to lgdstudy.com and go down to the contact us now, or you go to you can email me at Lauren, Lauren, at lgdconsulting.com with any questions you may have also. All right. So with that, we'll call it a night. Thank you very much, and good luck on your exams, everybody.